The Blackhawks dropped the opening game of the Tom Kurvers Prospect Showcase, but do get solid performances from Frank Nazar, Nick Lardis, and AJ Spelliscy.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can find me on X at JackBushman2. Be sure to go and check out my Strictly Blackhawks account as well at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. And real quick, got to let you all know as well that today's episode is sponsored by Indeed. Go and visit Indeed.com/lockdown right now to get a $75 sponsored job credit that'll help get your jobs more visibility. Need to hire? Then you need Indeed. All right, good morning, everyone. Again, thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. I hope everyone's weekend has gotten off to a lovely start. And the Tom Kurvers Prospect Showcase, of course, opened up in Maryland Heights, Missouri, just outside St. Louis last night, with the first game of action being between our Blackhawks and the hated St. Louis Blues. First things first, folks. Just good to see hockey back in action, even if it is a scrimmage between the prospects of these two rival teams. It's just good to see hockey back in action. It's good to see NFL football back in action as well. Of course, college is in full swing. My Missouri Tigers got a real big game this afternoon against Boston College. Looking forward to that one. But yeah, first takeaway, just good to see hockey back in action. Good to see the fellas competing in game-like situations. Unfortunately, though, our Blackhawks did come out on the wrong end of this opening game of the Prospect Showcase, falling 4-3 to the Blues in overtime. Had this have been a game that was more serious, quite honestly, had it have even been a preseason game, I would have been a little disappointed the Blackhawks let this one slip out of their grasp, as the St. Louis Blues didn't lead for a single second in regulation during this game. However, there were still plenty of positive takeaways from game one. There were some negatives as well. So I'm going to dive into it. Let's go ahead and jump right in. And again, just a reminder to please go hit that like button, and more importantly, subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. Currently on the climb to 2,000 subscribers, and the coverage is really going to start ramping up as training camp is now officially less than 1 week away. But getting into the good, first takeaway that I had was Frank Nazar, the 2022 13th overall pick. Really the premier piece on this Blackhawks rookie camp roster, especially with defenseman Artyom Levshunov not taking part in this Tom Kurvers Prospect Showcase. By the way, I will have an update on Artyom Levshunov coming in segment 2 of today's show, so make sure to stick around for that. But Frank Nazar, with Levshunov being out, and even had Levshunov had been there, he would have been the main focal point of this Blackhawks offense in the forward group. And I thought he got off to an awesome start in last night's game. One in early face-off in the offensive zone in like the opening 20 seconds, and then instantly drew a penalty with his puck control, then goes on to net the power play. Primary assist on the Hawks' opening goal of the game some like 30 seconds later. So off to a really good start. And all in all, he just had the puck a ton all night long in the offensive zone. Skated well on that top line with Landon Slaggert and Colton Dach. They acted like the big guns out there for the Blackhawks. Really were cycling the puck very well. And Frank Nazar was at the head of it. I thought he was really impressive in terms of his board battles and his tenacity. And that's something we've heard about Frank Nazar for years now, right? Is even though he's a little bit undersized, he's kind of like an Energizer bunny out there, and he's not scared to mix it up and get into the dirty areas. And I was really impressed with how many puck battles he won in order to kind of keep the cycle going and keep the momentum alive in the offensive zone with them cycling the puck. I thought he did a really good job of that last night. I also really like that he was trying to get passes through to the most dangerous spots, trying to set up his teammates in those areas. I also like to see him try and rifle a one-timer from the left dot on the top power play unit. All in all, I thought he controlled the man advantage really well. So a really strong start from Frank Nazar. I did think in the second half of the game, he wasn't as efficient as he was in the early going. I thought he kind of tried to do too much there late and maybe took matters into his own hands a little bit too much. He also had a breakaway opportunity with like 2.5, 3 minutes to go in regulation that could have iced it. I would have really liked to see Frankie house that one, especially considering his position. He's really trying to make a lasting impression on this coaching staff to make the Blackhawks opening night roster out of training camp. And that strong first impression starts right here, right now. Would have been big for him to get that primary assist on the opening goal and then come away with a game winner. All in all, though, still a really solid opening game of the Tom Kurvers Prospect Showcase for Frank Nazar, the type of performance you want to see out of a player like him who's going to be highlighted all throughout not only rookie camp, but training camp as well. Second takeaway I have has to be Nick Lardis continues to just look like one heck of a steal for the Blackhawks in the third round. And I have a feeling, Blackhawks fans, that 67th overall selection is going to work out really nicely for this team. Of course, Lardis selected 67th in last year's draft and then 67th John Mustard in this year's draft, who is a prospect I'm very intrigued by as well. Not able to take part in this tournament because he's playing college hockey this year, but didn't take Nick Lardis very long to make his impact on this game. He was the one who buried the feed from Frank Nazar on the power play at the right dot to put the Blackhawks ahead 1-0 early. We've talked about that shot that he has ever since the Blackhawks drafted him. It's been a lot of fun watching him develop and have a lot of success in the OHL, even though he was injured this past year. And if some of you remember, going back to last year's training camp and preseason, Nick Lardis performed really well. He was catching some folks' eyes, and that's what really put him on the radar. Love to see him get off to this hot of a start. And it wasn't just the goal that he scored that made him impressive in this game. I thought, the pace in which he plays with is really noticeable. It feels like outside of the size, Nick Lardis has all the offensive tools. And I remember going back to my my most recent prospect rankings that I went through, I believe I had Nick Lardis ranked number 12, but even I said during that, numbers 7 through 12 are really close in this Blackhawks prospect pool. And between all of those, I mentioned Nick Lardis has the highest top 6 upside, but I also think he has the lowest floor out of all of them because there are some questions about his game away from the puck. Well, he looked really solid away from the puck in this game. His hockey IQ is really nice. He doesn't let the lack of size kind of keep him away from engaging in battles. Now, he's not always going to win them, but I love to see that he's engaged out there. He's giving effort on the forecheck. He even got shifts on the penalty kill last night, which I think those are opportunities that, might not necessarily be the role that he has one day down the road, but it's good opportunities to kind of diversify a little bit more than what it is right now, which is just kind of strictly offensively. Really solid performance from Nick Lardis last night. Quite honestly, I was a little surprised he didn't get one shift with Frank Nazar and either Colton Dach or Landon Slaggert. I would really like to see Nick Lardis get an opportunity with that trio in the second game of this Tom Kurvers Prospect Showcase. Next, we have Colton Dach, who clearly got the memo about the Blackhawks wanting him to have some added physicality and to play with a little bit more fire and emotion out there. That was clear right from the get-go. Colton Dach was trying to make his presence felt in that department. I thought, he was trying to drive the puck to the net all night long. He made a couple of booming hits, mixed it up with some St. Louis Blues players, got a full-blown double leg takedown while mixing it up. Just really showed off his size and his power. And I mean, when you're 6'4", 210 pounds, you got to use it. And feels like the Blackhawks want to see that more. Colton Dach absolutely got the memo. It felt like he was really trying to play like a power forward last night. And also, it really feels like, especially based on his comments that he made recently when I talked about them on the show, saying, he's trying to take someone's job. That was clear. He really wants to try and make this NHL team out of camp. He wasn't leaving anything on the table last night. He left it all on the ice. Really solid performance from Colton Dach. Landon Slaggert, I also thought, had a pretty solid game on the top line, scored a shorthanded goal, nice patience in tight. Just clearly a little bit more physically mature than a lot of other prospects, which isn't the most surprising thing. I don't ever anticipate him to have elite offensive traits, but good hands and ability in tight. That's really what you want to see from a power forward type mold like Landon Slaggert. So nice to see him find his way on the stat sheet. That was mostly courtesy of the next guy I want to talk about, though, Paul Ludwinski, second round pick in 2022. I thought he had an awesome game last night, a beautiful play while the Blackhawks were shorthanded to find Landon Slaggert all alone in front of the net. I thought his speed and the pace that he played with, I think he has more pace than I ever gave him credit for. He was absolutely buzzing up and down the ice all night long, played with a lot of jump. And at the center position, that's exactly what the Blackhawks want in their system. Guys who can get up and down the ice in a hurry. I don't think he has elite offensive abilities, but he was noticeable last night, both with his playmaking, his grinded out abilities, and I thought he had some good quality scoring chances right down the center lane. AJ Spellacy, also another huge takeaway. The 2024 third round pick, 72nd overall, made his impact, felt early, skated into the offensive zone with some nice speed and housed a shot past the Blues goaltender from the right dot. Just really good size and speed combo makes AJ Spellacy so intriguing. He did take a late penalty, which, to be fair, might not have been a penalty. When I was live tweeting it out, some people were giving me some flack. I'm like, come on, this is a game held in an arena that fits 4,000 people, and we're not getting replays of it, all right? I'm not going to argue with you over a penalty call here. I still thought Spellacy was a little bit out of control in that situation. It was just a bad time to make that type of play. But outside of that, a rather spectacular first little appearance for AJ Spellacy in a Blackhawk sweater. Excited to see what he's going to do for the Windsor Spitfires this year. And then my last positive takeaway was just nice to see Samuel Savoie buzzing out there once again, doing his thing, mixing it up, tongue out, having fun. I don't know if anyone enjoys being out there on the ice more than Samuel Savoie, and I would have said that before the femur injury. I think that's probably just added additional gratefulness and enjoyment to him playing the game. He was forcing the opponent's hand, wrecking some plays, getting in and making some big hits along the boards. Actually drew a penalty on a nice rush of speed and drive to the net as well. Just good to see him healthy all in all. He actually got banged up in the final seconds of regulation and missed overtime. Looked like he injured his hand, but good to hear Coach Anders Sorensen after the game say there were no issues there. He should be good to go to play here tonight. So just nice to see Samuel Savoie buzzing again, and nice to see a lot of solid performances from a few notable Blackhawks prospects. There were some bad, though, there was some bad, I should say, proper grammar, that I do want to get into here before we roll into segment 2, mostly on the defensive side of things. Ethan Del Mastro, Nolan Allen, not a good start for either of them, particularly Ethan Del Mastro. I thought he looked really rusty, had some bad turnovers on pucks that just need to get out of the defensive zone. He absolutely flubbed a breakaway opportunity that would have sealed this one for the Blackhawks. But, giving him the benefit of the doubt, it's their first game of action in quite some time. Same with Nolan Allen. I actually thought he made some nice defensive plays in terms of his physicality and his reads and his shot blocking and being in the right place at the right time. However, his breakout passes were dreadful. I mean, I counted at least 4 turnovers, 4 pucks that should have been out of the defensive zone that Nolan Allen wasn't able to get out. One of the St. Louis Blues goals, I believe their opener, actually came from a turnover of his, a little bit of a soft pass behind his own net. It's just kind of clear to me, based on what I've seen from Nolan Allen these last 2 years, especially in comparison to Ethan Del Mastro. I know it wasn't a sound night for Del Mastro's puck game, but he has much higher and much better puck moving abilities than Nolan Allen does. I think he's the better skater of the two as well. But Allen is probably the more rugged, true stay-at-home style of a defender. Not an ideal start for either of those guys. I didn't think Allen looked particularly good on the second power play unit either. But do want to mention that during an interview yesterday, Nolan Allen revealed that he tore his MCL late last season in his first pro year with the Rockford Ice Hogs. That's why we didn't get to see him in the postseason, which is rather unfortunate. But seems like that's healed up well. He says he feels fully healthy, so hopefully he'll have a bounce-back game on the back end, along with Ethan Del Mastro here this evening. Martin Misiak, I also thought, he had a nice assist to set up AJ Spellacy and to find him with speed entering the offensive zone. I thought it was clear, though, he got outbodied a couple of times and definitely needs to get stronger and to fill out his frame a little bit more to play the style of game he wants at this level, which, to be fair, he probably is still 2-3 years away from making this type of leap, if ever. But it was just clear to me he needs to add a little bit of weight there. Drew Comesso, thought he had a decent game in goal, got bailed out by the goalpost, I think 3 times in this one. Definitely wants the overtime winner back. A couple of them, nothing he could really do, being screened, a couple of deflections. But I thought he was a little bit rusty in that as well with his positioning and getting from post to post. I thought he was a little slower than what I usually see out of Comesso. And then I thought it was also just clear that Artyom Levshunov was really missed on this back end. I mean, outside of Ethan Del Mastro and Nolan Allen, it's really thin back there for the Blackhawks, right? Ty Henry, 6th-round pick in this past year's draft. Lucas Brenton, who was a camp invite last year that earned an AHL contract with the Rockford Ice Hogs. And then they have Matherin, Kennedy back there, 2 guys who, I mean, they really don't have much affiliation to. So the loss of Artyom Levshunov on the back end really does sting for the Blackhawks in this prospect showcase. And then I did also want to mention Rockford Ice Hogs head coach Anders Sorensen, who was slated to coach this game from behind the bench, had to attend to a family matter and depart from St. Louis. No real update on that situation. I hope everything's all right with the Sorensen family and everything. It seemed like, kind of based on Rob Klinkhammer's comments after the game, he was the one who filled in as the head coach, being Rockford Ice Hogs assistant coach. Based on his comments, I don't want to assume anything, but it seemed like everything was all right. Keeping thoughts and prayers, though, for the Sorensen family that everything is okay. Hopefully, we'll get him back sooner rather than later. But yeah, there are all the takeaways that I had from an eventful opening game of the Tom Kurvers Prospect Showcase. Going to take a quick break here, Blackhawks fans, but don't go anywhere, because coming up in just a moment, I'll return and get into the latest injury updates that we have about 2024 second overall pick, Artyom Levshunov. But first, real quick, I always do this, folks. Got them in the wrong order. I need to talk to you all about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience is what brings home the championship trophy, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. And eBay Motors has everything that you need to maintain your vehicle and to level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll always find what you're looking for. Plus, with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or else you'll get your money back. So what are you waiting for? Go and keep your ride or die alive by visiting ebaymotors.com. With all the parts you need at the prices you actually want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and to bring home that championship trophy. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. Again, be sure to go and check out ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only and exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S.-based customers. Back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Again, just a reminder to please go and hit the like button. Comment down below. Mailbag Monday right around the corner. I know lots of you have Blackhawks questions. Please be sure to reach out with those down in the comment section. Hit me up on any one of my socials, or you can even email lockedonblackhawks@gmail.com. And while I'm on the climb to 2,000 subscribers, I'm about 250 shy. I really want to hit that number before the Blackhawks open up the regular season against the Utah Hockey Club. Please help me out. It's 100% free, won't cost you anything, only takes a quick click of the button. And also, be sure to go and check out the Locked On NHL podcast, as hockey season is about to get back in action. Locked On NHL is where the season never ends, providing national expertise with a local perspective. And you can easily find the link to Locked On NHL down in the description, or simply search on YouTube or wherever you may be listening to your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Segment 2, Elliotte Friedman on his 32 Thoughts column on Friday afternoon provided the latest injury update that we have on 2024 second overall pick Artyom Levshunov, who we know will not be, sadly, taking part in the Tom Kurvers Prospect Showcase this weekend due to a right foot injury that apparently stemmed from him blocking a shot a couple of weeks ago. And while this update, the latest update that we have from Elliotte Friedman via 32 Thoughts, isn't worst case scenario for sure, it also isn't the ideal update that I'm sure the Blackhawks organization nor us fans wanted, as Levshunov apparently, according to Friedman, will spend the next 2 weeks in a walking boot and could potentially miss a maximum of 6 weeks. Definitely a tough blow to swallow for us fans, and definitely a tough blow for Levshunov to swallow, as he was just about to be entering his first pro season, of course, foregoing his sophomore year of eligibility out of college hockey. And I was really excited to see him in action this weekend, playing meaningful minutes, probably along with Ethan Del Mastro, if I had to guess, on the Blackhawks top pairing. And then also seeing what he has in store during training camp against, NHL ready competitors, and then getting his first look of action in the preseason. Really looking forward to that, but doesn't look like it's going to be on the table now for Artyom Levshunov, with, of course, training camp starting in just about 5 days of time. And with Levshunov being such a high pick and such an integral part of the future on the back end for the Blackhawks, 6 weeks does feel like a little bit of a safety blanket time lapse here. But I wouldn't be surprised to see him off ice for at least 5 of that, or maybe the entire 6-week period. Let's go ahead and do the math. From when it was announced that Levshunov was out, which was Wednesday when Blackhawks rookie camp opened up at Fifth Third Arena in Chicago, 6 weeks from then takes us to October 16th, which is just over a week after the start of the 2024-2025 NHL regular season. And even if Levshunov were to miss only 4 weeks, which again, I think the Blackhawks probably aren't going to be rushing him, so I think that's probably not the most likely situation. That still has him returning sometime around the beginning of October, when training camp is basically all but over at that point in time. So doesn't seem like we're going to be seeing, more likely than not, we're not going to be seeing Artyom Levshunov in the preseason or probably at any point in training camp with the Blackhawks, which really, really does stink. Especially after, making this decision for him to leave Michigan State, for him to not have that kind of natural flow going into his first pro season is really rather unfortunate. And it's been a whirlwind for him since coming over from Belarus to North America, playing for the Green Bay Gamblers, and then not really having much of a training camp leading into his freshman year with the Spartans. He goes out and dominates at that league, winds up getting drafted, and immediately turns pro and is in the city of Chicago skating with some guys, getting ready for his first pro training camp. I mean, it really has been a whirlwind for Artyom Levshunov, but quite honestly, what I'm thinking, Blackhawks fans, is maybe it's been such a whirlwind that some time off, while I'm sure it's frustrating for all parties involved, him, the front office, the coaching staff, and all of us fans, we want to see what this kid who we just drafted second overall has in store, right? Especially with him going pro. I quite honestly think it might not be the worst thing in the world. Give him some time to just kind of take a breather, relax, get everything situated. I mean, life's been coming at him fast for basically, like I said, a year and a half straight now. And I think this, while it's obviously not ideal, I'm not going to say that, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world for Artyom Levshunov, and it's going to allow him to fully gear up for the start of the season in Rockford, right? We knew it was unlikely for him to make the Blackhawks team out of camp, but now that's completely out of the picture. We know he's going to be starting the year with the Rockford Ice Hogs. So I think this just gives him a little bit of added time. Yeah, we would love to have him on the ice, but not the absolute worst thing in the world, and not the worst update either, even though we all wanted to see him back in action sometime sooner rather than later. But this, again, does open up a lot of opportunities for guys who are trying to make an impression on this coaching staff. Guys like Ethan Del Mastro, Nolan Allen, who we're seeing this weekend too, again, are outsiders. They have an outside chance of making this team out of camp, but you never know. I mean, who's going to be the next Wyatt Kaiser from last year? He's another guy who's going to get added opportunities in training camp and in the preseason, because Levshunov is not going to be there taking minutes. And Kaiser's a guy who we saw play on his opposite side last year with Levshunov out. There's another hole there on the right-hand side for the Blackhawks. Nolan Allen is someone who we've seen play the right-hand side. So just more opportunities and chances for these guys in training camp and in the preseason, now that we know Artyom Levshunov could be out for a maximum of 6 weeks. He's at least going to spend the next 2 weeks in a walking boot, via Elliot Friedman from his 32 Thoughts column on Friday morning. There is the latest that we have on 2024 second overall pick Artyom Levshunov. Really hoping for a speedy recovery out of him. Coming up in just a moment. Before I wrap up today's episode, I still got to get into the latest news we have on the Blackhawks' new broadcast home. But first, I got to talk to you all about Indeed. We're all driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, but match with Indeed. And if you need to hire, then you need Indeed, because Indeed is the best matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates in an instant. And Indeed, not only they don't just help you hire faster, but 93% of employers agree that Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. And one of the things that I personally love about Indeed is they make hiring all in one place so simple and so easy, because you can avoid all of the unnecessary information and the necessary steps that you have to go through that still wind up leading you nowhere. Instead, go and join the more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that currently use Indeed to hire great talent in an instant. And listeners of this show, if you go in and visit Indeed.com/lockdown right now, simply click the link down below in the description, then you'll get a free $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility. Again, go and visit Indeed.com/lockdown to get a $75 sponsored job credit that'll get your job posts more visibility. Need to hire? Then you need Indeed. Real quick, just wanted to say thank you again for making Locked On Blackhawks your very first listen here to start off your day. And a reminder, Mailbag Monday right around the corner. Make sure to drop your Blackhawks questions in the comment section down below. Segment 3, before I tie a bow on today's episode and let you all go and enjoy the rest of your weekends and also get ready to watch my Missouri Tigers. There's been a little bit of a disaster surrounding the announcement of the new broadcast home of the Chicago Blackhawks. Of course, I'm referring to CHSN. And just a couple of days ago, I reacted to CHN announcing its first distribution deal with none other than DirecTV, aka DirecTV Stream, and Uverse. And I think rightfully so, there's been a fair amount of backlash from Blackhawks fans following that announcement, mostly from the Comcast owners, with Xfinity and Comcast just being so prevalent in Chicago and all throughout the Chicagoland areas and the northwest suburbs and Indiana, all that stuff. Obviously, a lot of Blackhawks fans and also Chicago White Sox and Chicago Bulls fans, as their new broadcast home is set to be CHSN as well. A lot of them are wondering what this means for the future of watching their favorite sports teams. And a lot of people are worried about whether or not they're going to be able to tune into the Blackhawks when, the preseason starts in just 11 days' time. What I do want to say first and foremost is, for anyone that hasn't checked it out yet, Jeff Agrest, who has been on top of this probably more so than anyone for the Chicago Sun-Times, he joined CHGO Blackhawks on Thursday, I want to say it was. Fantastic episode, providing a little bit of perspective as to exactly what's going down, what to believe, just providing notable tidbits about everything you want to hear about that. I highly recommend you go and check out that episode if you haven't done so already. The first thing that I do want to reiterate is, while there is a right to be concerned, there's a couple of things here. One, they have announced that more distribution deals are soon to be announced. They are expected to come sometime sooner rather than later. And again, it would be such a flop by the Blackhawks, the White Sox, and the Bulls to not have their games televised for as many people to see as possible. Yes, they want this network to be a smash. They want it, I'm sure, to be like Marquee as it is now. There were a lot of hurdles, of course, for Marquee as well. But they lose money if they don't get this broadcasted to as many people as possible. And I firmly believe there are going to be more distribution deals announced sooner rather than later. Quite honestly, I'm not a Comcast cable owner, but I'd be really, really surprised if Comcast and Xfinity didn't wind up with a deal with CHSN. The question that really, really still remains prevalent is when? When is this going to happen? And Jeff Agrest, one thing that he really prefaced in that interview with CHGO Blackhawks is, these things are tricky. Leverage, negotiation tactics. When we're talking about a lot of money here, it usually does come down to the deadline. And if you all remember Marquee, I mean, when that first got brought in, I quite honestly forgot about it because I've never had Marquee, which is quite honestly a shame. they waited to, the first game that they televised, I believe, was opening day for the Cubs, and the deal was signed like a day before. So these things usually do come down to the last minute. We just don't know exactly what the next step is going to be. It does feel like more distribution deals, I firmly believe, are going to come, though. Like a worst case scenario, it seems like what they have right now, DirecTV Stream, and Uverse. But I really feel like that's not in the realm of possibility in today's world. We just don't know exactly what the next, sorry for that, folks, what the next distribution deal is going to be, whether it is going to be Comcast and Xfinity, whether it's going to be YouTube TV. We still don't know about that. And as a YouTube TV owner, I certainly have my concerns there. Hulu, Fubo, right? We're not exactly sure which of those are going to have deals, but I do think we need to stay a little bit patient before we go into a complete panic here. But what I will say is the handling of this situation, the unveiling of CHSN, the timing of everything coming down to the deadline, it has been a little bit of a disaster, right? And also, when Jeff Agrest did post like the studio sets for CHSN, their Blackhawks one was literally the same as CHGO's. I mean, they literally stole it right out of their office. So, yeah, this thing has been a little bit of a nightmare announcement. I do think ultimately it's probably going to be handled, but sometime sooner rather than later would be more than ideal. Agrest did provide another notable update, though, saying that the first 3 preseason games are scheduled before the Chicago Sports Network launches. The Blackhawks have announced their first preseason game will be streamed on Blackhawks.com. We're not exactly sure for the next 2 road games against the Minnesota Wild and the Detroit Red Wings, but they are doing everything in their power to get those televised for Blackhawks fans. What we do know is all 6 preseason games will be on the radio on WGN, and CHSN broadcast figures to start on October 1st. That's the day the new deal kicks in, with that opening game being the 4th preseason game of action for the Blackhawks against the Minnesota Wild. So still kind of just got to wait and see. Don't exactly know for sure, again, what the next distribution deal is going to be, but we do know who CHSN's Blackhawks broadcasters are going to be for this upcoming season, as they released yesterday. Pat Boyle is back as the studio host. No surprise there. We've known that for a couple of weeks, maybe a month even now. Love to see PB back, along with Pat Boyle, is Tony Granato, who was brought on last year to add a little bit of actual hockey knowledge and expertise from experience, from being behind the bench and from being a player. Tony Granato personally wasn't my favorite, but I do think his type of mindset is needed there, along with Pat Boyle, who is a guy who never played the game, but is a really good host and really knowledgeable of this Blackhawks team. You kind of combine them with one another. I think that is a good combination. And then they brought Caley Chelios back, which, I mean, I understand. It is what it is. Charlie Meliodas, not announced as part of this CHSN broadcast team. I think that's a little bit of a miss. However, hearing on CHGO Blackhawks yesterday that Charlie is going to be okay. He's going to be taken care of. So I love to hear that. I'm sure he's still probably going to be part of their podcast in some way, shape, or form. So love to hear that Charlie is going to be fine, even though I would have loved him as part of that pregame, postgame, and during intermissions. I think, he was kind of starting to naturally come into his own in that position. Being a younger guy and being in front of camera, it's not the easiest thing to do, folks. So I certainly understood Charlie, like, kind of having a little bit of hiccups there, as I certainly did and still do have when I do this show. But I really thought he was finding his footing late last year and has a good chemistry with PB and the guys. So really would like to see Charlie Meliodas involved some way with this CHSN broadcast. And as far as the Caley Chelios, Tony Granato thing, neither of them were my favorite candidates. I understand bringing them back. We'll see how it goes. I thought this would have been an opportunity for the Blackhawks to go in a different direction and really start over from scratch. So I'm a little frustrated that they kind of ran back the same thing with just Xing a couple of names out. I would have liked a change of pace, but it is what it is. Thought it was kind of funny on CHGO when they were like, everyone seems to be fine with this. I'm like, are they? It is what it is, though. But that's going to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks. Everyone, thank you again for joining me on the show. You can find me on X at Jack Bushman2. Check out my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey if you want to get all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. Quick reminder as well, hit that subscribe button on the climb to 2,000. Would really appreciate your help. And if you're tuning in through an audio platform, be sure to rate and review 100% free as well, wherever you may be listening to your podcast. So until next episode, everyone, enjoy the rest of your weekends. Go Blackhawks. Hopefully they can at least pick up one of these 2 games here in St. Louis during the Tom Kurvers Prospect Showcase. And MIZZOU, baby. Got to take care of business today. Everyone enjoy the rest of your weekend. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every